Hey Zamas, welcome back. This is your host Divikran Ravela here. Today I'm going to discuss about an MVVM architecture, how it helps in the building the Xamarin applications, and especially using Xamarin Forms. I've been asked many times by new students that wants to learn about Xamarin or Xamarin Forms, what is an MVVM architecture, and how it actually helps us to build applications. And the most common question I found is what is it and how it actually helps. And most of the students actually face a confusing part of MVM is that they can't really get it straight in terms of how and why it is used. And today I'm try to explain you in my terms how it is, how an MVVM architecture is laid out, and how it is used in Xamarin Forms. Okay, let's get started creating a new Xamarin Forms app. Let's create a blank forms, and I'm going to create some MVVM project kind of thing and Xamarin Forms. Just any namespace, it could be just me. And I'm going to select Android and iOS with shadecode as .NET Standard Library. And let's go on with it. And yeah, just leave them to default. And let's wait for it to start creating the project. And once before it loads up, let's see. Okay, here we got three projects here. Like one is the standard project where we have the common code is being written into it. So as you can see at the moment it is set to .NET Standard 2.2 2.0, and this is a new standard that they came up with, Microsoft came up with. Instead of using PCL, now we have .NET Standard 2.0, which is more having more libraries inside it, and it supports more .NET libraries. So we can do more in the standard project than we used to do it in the PCL project, so which is good for us. So anyways, getting back to our, our discussion on MVVM. So let's quickly run this project and see what it actually shows. As you all know that this label is going to be get displayed, and if the text will be set is let's create let me stop this one again and let's run it on iOS so that it's much more quicker. And as you can see, this text will show you the Xamarin, welcome to Xamarin Forms. And let's create iOS and change this to debug simulator and leave that to iPhone X. Let's quickly load that. And as you can see, it's getting loaded into the simulator, and we will see this text. As you already know, it's going to come up with welcome to Xamarin Forms. But what is so different to other ways? Like if I want to add a change any text here, then I have to come here. I have to come here and change text here, and if I had to redo it, and it will actually reload the project and change the text to welcome to Xamarin. But in the real world, business scenarios wants this text to be changing dynamically, and that's where the um, requirement comes in. If you have experience with developing web application, you can actually use JavaScript to do the change of text using JavaScript when a payload comes back from the API. But how do you do the similar thing in the Xamarin Forms? That's where MVVM helps us to do, and that in turn will help you to you need help from binding. So there is something called as binding. So you need to start with the flower bracket or curly brackets, and then type the word binding inside it. And in this case I'm going to just say name for now, and we need to create name. For example, like I need to bind some property called name in a view model. So as you know, MVVM, model model view and view model. So we have the view here, and we're going to go for the view model now. So let's create a view model, and let's create just to go with the convention, we just call main view model and just create a new one. And as you can see here, I'm going to say something like a property called string, and I'm going to call it as name. And exactly right, this property is what that's going to be referenced here with the name. And if I come back into this page, when I do how do I bind it to a view model and a page? The one way is to do is the binding context, and sorry, you have to do it in the view code behind file of the main page. So this is where you need to do that, just under the initialize component, and look out for something called as binding context, and then just simply say new main view model. And now, since this is set to, by doing this line number 16, you are actually saying that you are actually binding a view and a view model together in a code behind. When the view loads, when this particular main page loads, it's going to have this binding context, which is in turn connected via this binding uh, part here with the label. And you can see this property is named here too, and they are connected by this binding context and binding. So now when I load this project and load it into the simulator, you can see this time it's not going to, just even before we do that, let's put some breakpoints in the view model and the main start page. So as you can see, it's loaded the main page now, and the moment it loads um, the constructor of the page, it should go and hit the view model as well. That's because we are creating a new instance of this one. So at this moment this name is set to null, so therefore we don't see any of the text here on the page. And now if I say something like name, um, just say this dot name is set to, for example, Melbourne, and say okay, and let's reload that again, and this time it's going to load with the text as you guessed it, it's going to be Melbourne. Let's go through the breakpoints. It's setting the word Melbourne, and it's going to display the word Melbourne. Okay, and now for your convenience, let's say that I want to change the view model name here. Okay, for example, I need access to view model here as well, and I'm going to say main view model and just say VM, just the name of the property, and let's say we have VM equal to view model, and now let's say VM dot name equal to Sydney. Okay, now guess what's going to be the answer? Let's see, let's quickly load it and try to guess the answer now, and let's find out what it's going to be. Okay, and now the view model is loading, and the very first thing that loads is a main page, and next it's going to come go to the view model here, and that's what it's loading. It says view model is name is set to Melbourne. Let's rerun this one, try to understand a bit more further, and it should load the main page now. um, Once it loads, when the page is set to when the constructor of the page is hit, it's going to create a new instance of view model. If I go into it, it's going to the view model and set the value there, and now it is set to Melbourne. And once we move away from it, it is you see it's still Melbourne, and once we set that to Sydney, you can see it is not changing because bindings are working fine, but we have few more things to do. So we have to make sure this is actually changing the text as it changes it. So in this case, I'm expecting this to be changing to a view to as a Sydney. And for example, in a MVVM, like we commonly try to use something called as iNotifiable property change. This is something that actually helps us to do that particular thing. So we, instead of showing Melbourne here, we want it to show as Sydney because that's what we are setting it next. And now if I resolve this interface here, I have this property changed event, and for this we have to write a small piece of code for this to work. And let's do something like this. And what I'm doing is I'm simply passing the property name, and that's setting that new argument, property change argument, event argument to whatever the property name is. And for this to work around, for this to work, I need to have some backing field property for this one, something like that, traditional property way of doing it. And now all I have to do is we have to change this property name setter to have this method also gets called. So just say something like that and just call the name of the property here. And now you're passing the name of the property as a string. So basically all we're saying is name, and name is being passed into this one. Okay, and now let's start this. Start again. And okay, now we are in the view page and view model, and it is now, it's already set to Melbourne. And now go back in again. Now it is set to Sydney. And what do we expect to see on the app? It's going to be Sydney. Okay, we'll add a bit more code. And on appearing, for example, on appearing I have to say, and all I want to say is, like, instead of calling Sydney, I want to set now to Canberra. Okay, so let's restart it and terminate it. I missed the terminator here. uh, okay, let's get the spelling right first, and that's Canberra. And let's quickly rerun this, and this time we should see Melbourne, starting off with Melbourne and then loading Sydney, and on appearing whatever is set to, this time it's Canberra. And let's go through all this again. Now it is set to Melbourne, and now it is set to Sydney, and now it goes to the application. And if you continue on, now it's on appearing comes in. Now at the moment the name is Sydney, and now it changes to Canberra, as you can see. And now, for example, if I have to call a method in a view model dot set city name, for example, and if I have some method in the view model called a set city name, and if I say name equal to New Delhi, and now let's run this again. So as you can expect, this should display New Delhi in the app. So as you can see here from the flow, the name property is keep changing in different circumstances and different scenarios. And now once this property is reached to this set city name, let's rerun this and see how it's going to behave. And once it's loaded, you will see it loaded with a main page, and now it goes into the view model and sets that to Melbourne. And now let's go back and set that to Sydney. And if I continue on, I'll get to on appearing. Currently we have Sydney, and now it is set to Canberra, and the app is not loaded yet. And now it's going to it, and now the name is already set to Canberra. Now back to view model, we are in view model, and now we are setting that to New Delhi. Okay, so yeah, that's as simple as that one. That might give you some idea of how the MVVM works and how it helps us in Xamarin Forms. And yeah, keep practicing Xamarin, and let me know if you have any questions, or if you want me to teach something on Xamarin, anything related to Xamarin, then yeah, post some comment and I'll try to make that video for you guys.